the FICO score doesn't matter. And I'm going to explain to you why. First of all, it relies on you having debt. Okay? It relies on you having debt. Well, what's part of my financial action plan? Get out of debt. And so why would this thing need to stick around? Why is this thing a measure of financial success? Doesn't seem very successful to me if you're sitting around with debt. Now, if you are applying for a car loan, yeah, FICO score is going to matter, but I don't want you applying for car loans. If you're applying for credit cards, then FICO score is going to matter. Well, I don't want you applying for new credit cards, but I don't want you in debt. I eventually want you out of all debt, your home and everything eventually, and then never have to worry about a FICO score again. So another reason the FICO score doesn't matter is that it tells me nothing about your assets. It tells me nothing about your cash, your investments, your save. It tells me nothing about that. It only tells me about your relationship with debt. Now, obviously, you need money to service your debt, but it tells me nothing about the other monies that you have. And that's a true measure of financial success. Truly, you can have a perfect FICO score and a negative net worth. Now, what do I mean? What you owe can be more than what you own, but you can still have a perfect FICO score. It's not taking into account whether you own a bunch of things or not. It's just taking into account whether you can make the banks happy or make your lenders happy over time. So let that sink in. You can have a negative net worth. You can owe more than you own and yet be seen as more creditworthy than somebody who owns a bunch of stuff but doesn't borrow money very often or at all. So this is obviously not a measure of financial success. This is obviously not something you should look at and go, this person's got their money in order. FICO scores don't mean anything. You can have no FICO and be a millionaire, multimillionaire. You can, and there are plenty of them out there who have no FICO score, but they're multimillionaires. And you see how that correlates, that being out of debt and not taking on debt can correlate to actually having money and actually having assets that you can live on in the long term and be a millionaire. If you just continue borrowing, then you're going to have to continue paying, and that's going to be a drain on your cash over time. And why else does a FICO not matter? Because you can buy whatever you want without one. You don't have to have one to buy anything. Obviously, this means you must pay cash for things, but isn't that what we want anyway? Like, you don't have to have one to buy anything. So let's say you have no FICO. You never want a FICO, you don't have a FICO. You want to buy a car. Guess what? I can go save up and buy a car. Done, right? Let's say I want to buy a house. Well, harder to save up for. You could, but I can still get a mortgage on a house. I can go through what's called manual underwriting. It's not the easiest of things to go through. It's not the easiest of things to find that mortgage companies do it. But you could, right? You could do that and still get a good rate and, show them everything about your financial life and be perfectly set up in order to succeed financially and not have a FICO. You can rent without a FICO. Now, people say, how do you do that? Every time I went to rent somewhere, they asked, to pull my credit history. They will. And if they look and they find that you have no credit history, well, guess what? Then they can still work with you. You just have to be upfront with them and say, I don't do debt. I don't take out debt. So what I want to show you is that you can show them your income and your expenses and making sure that you have the money to pay for the apartment. They may make you pay a little bigger deposit, or they may make you, put down first and last month's rent. But what it's going to do as well is it's going to show them that you can actually pay and you will get an apartment. More than not will actually do this. I've seen individuals do this on videos before where they'll call up apartment complexes and just ask, hey, do I need a FICO score? And they're like, no, if you just show us, your income and your ability to pay all this kind of stuff, you have to pay a little bigger deposit, whatever, but you can still rent here. That's all that you want, right? So is it worth going into debt to maintain this thing that doesn't even really matter? And bear in mind, everything that I'm talking about here, getting a mortgage, being able to rent, being able to get a job, being able to do all these things, right? Everything I'm talking about here is with no FICO score. Not with a low FICO score. Because what's a low FICO score tell a potential lender or creditor? That you're not good at paying your debts back, right? Or that you haven't paid your debts back, or you haven't had debt very often and you're not good at it, right? And that's not the message that needs to be portrayed. What needs to be portrayed is one of two messages. Either I'm really good with debt, which we don't want to be good with debt, we just don't want to have debt, right? Or I don't have debt at all and I don't mess with debt. And they'll respect those things, but they will not respect not being good with debt and showing that you are not good with it. That's going to be a place where you're going to lose a lot of those advantages that no credit score has. So that tells you that when you have that really low one, your goal should not be try to push towards the high one and try to keep, paying on debts to get to the high one. No. If you have a low credit score already, a low credit score already, you just need to get out of debt and get to the point where you have an indeterminable credit score and that you can pay for things in cash. Now, it really comes down to this. What do I suggest and what do I actually do? Because I want you guys to actually be able to look at what I do and emulate it, right? I want you to look at what I do and make that same thing work for your life. I want you to be able to see that I practice what I preach and that I'm not telling you to do one thing and then myself doing another thing. So what do I suggest? Well, I suggest, first of all, you pay off all consumer debts. All consumer debts. I don't want any debt balances outstanding other than a mortgage if you have a mortgage. Okay? So we're going to pay off all those consumer debts. Then what are we going to do? We're going to keep a credit card or two with good benefits around. Talked about credit cards before, right? I do keep a credit card. I keep two credit cards, right? One that has good cash back and then one that I get airline miles with, right? And I never hold a balance. I pay them off every single month. Never fails. Always paid them off, right? And I make sure that I'm not overspending. Okay, now let's kind of dig into this one by one. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping these credit cards around. I'm not accruing interest. I'm not holding debt balances. I'm simply using them to get those rewards and maintain my FICO score. Because it is easier to get a mortgage with a FICO score. And it does take some work out of renting if you have a FICO score. And you don't have to worry about that thing with a job if you have a good FICO score. Okay? I will concede that to anybody who wants to make the arguments and anybody who wants to leave me anything nasty in the comments. But that is not the most important thing. Okay? I do it because I'm playing the game. It's a game, right? All these things have been set up this way because it is a game. They want to keep you in debt. The lenders want you to come back for more and more debt, but we don't want that. We want to win at the game. Now, is it difficult to win at the game? Absolutely, it's difficult to win at the game because you're not set up to win. The lender is set up to win at the game where they keep lending you money. And the credit card company is set up to win in the situation where they keep giving you credit. If you notice, and this is a really interesting thing, if you're really good with your credit cards and you're paying them off all the time, you ever notice what credit card companies will do? They'll offer you higher limits. Now, what's that doing? That's just tempting you to push higher, to build up a balance, and eventually not be able to pay that credit card off the way that you have. And that's their way of making sure that they win. But you can make sure that you win if you are self-disciplined, if you have the safeguards in place that you can be honest with yourself and have some honest conversations. Now, this is what I think about holding the credit cards, keeping the credit cards, right? If I know that I have the type of personality that will not allow me to keep a credit card around and be responsible with it, I've talked about this before. I do not do it, okay? I'm not keeping debt around for fun, okay? I'm not keeping any type of debt instrument around for fun. The only reason I'm keeping a credit card, benefits, FICO score. That's it, okay? I would rather you have zero indeterminable FICO score, right, than fall into the trap of having credit card debt at 24% interest and playing, patty cake with Visa or MasterCard or whomever. I want you to get out of consumer debt. And having the credit cards doesn't mean you're back in debt. It just means that you are using them basically as an extension of your checking account. And that's the way I think about it. I think of credit cards as an extension of my checking account.